I did get a message from Krista Thorpe from the Island Institute that she would like to be joining us today and might give us a little update on the status of the state program and efforts on uh, digital equity and digital inclusion. So, and here she is. So we don't have to start with that, but
Okay, yep.
Right in clue. Right.
So do you want to have her first, or
sure.
if she's not on
Krista.
yeah.
We can go out of order here.
Yeah. Welcome, Krista.
Hi, thank you. Let's see, was that Scott? Or,
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah.
Yep. So actually, even I don't think you're on the agenda, but would love to start with you if possible.
well, yeah, and I can make it brief, but this is just as much for our new partner Greg's benefit as all of yours. I mentioned to Kathy I could just give a brief update on where the state is in digital equity planning, and specifically Island Institute's work in Hancock and Waldo counties. And yeah, maybe more as a precursor to a group discussion this committee might want to have on what are elements of the work your towns might want to take on in the coming year when there are more opportunities being made for to fund digital inclusion activities, kind of those things that you can do with broadband to make sure everyone in your community is benefiting from that. So just to keep myself on track, and because some of you might not have necessarily heard any of this so far, I'm just going to share some slides if that's all right. And I think that some of you have seen this, but are you seeing Hancock and Waldo Regional Digital Inclusion?
Yes. Yep.
So for those of you who don't know, I'm Krista Thorpe. I work at the Island Institute, which is based in Rockland, but the community development mission of the organization, which started 40 years ago, just focused on unbridged islands, of which there are the MDI is an important gateway, of course, to Cranberries and Swans Island and others, but the mission really expanded to the entire coast of Maine, focusing on sustainable economic development and community development with an increased focus on climate resilience as well in recent years. But we started getting involved in supporting community broadband planning, as many of you know, several years ago, because it is a tool necessary for that economic development and sustainable year-round community. So you all know that, don't have to tell you, but we have, with the increased funding and changes and successes at the state, like a much more funding, really partly as a result of the pandemic and the federal funding, Island Institute has been transitioning our focus away from direct community broadband planning support, and are looking ahead over the next couple of years to really stepping back from that and focusing on making sure that where broadband investments have happened, the benefits are being, equitably realized, and then also kind of focusing on how broadband is going to be a really important asset in fishing communities as they transition based on new regulations to the industries and things. So this kind of process and program that I'm about to talk through below three briefly was kind of perfect timing for Island Institute as we look to transition away from that direct infrastructure planning support and onto the many benefits that broadband will bring. So going to do kind of a what, where, when, how of this Maine Connectivity Authority statewide initiative called the Regional and Tribal Broadband Partners Network, where back several months ago in December of last year, Maine Connectivity Authority had an application process and selected and awarded 13 organizations across the state to be a central coordinator for not only keeping tabs on what's happening with broadband infrastructure planning and grant applications, but with to help support the state's digital equity planning process. And these are the 13 organizations. Island Institute, Hancock County was very, very natural fit for us, again, because of the unbridged and bridged island communities we're already very connected to in your region, but the state wasn't seeing anyone really step up for the inland portions of those counties and for Waldo County. So we volunteered to take on Waldo and Hancock County and be a central coordinator, but one of our real desires is to work closely with regional planning organization in each of those counties, which is why I'm glad that Greg, the planner from Hancock County Planning Commission, has been able to join these calls. And so I'll kind of come back to a little bit more of what's happening in Hancock in a bit, but definitions in case you've been so focused on the infrastructure that you haven't necessarily taken the time to learn what we mean when we say digital equity, this buzz term. I like to think of it as it's the goal, it's what we want to achieve in the state, it's what Congress has mandated that all states try to work toward and achieve through a lot of the federal funding. And it's a condition in which everyone has the IT capacity needed for full participation in society, democracy, and economy. And I think that where organizations like Hancock County Planning Commission can be really valuable are in that idea of democracy, like civic engagement and the idea that, even at in our municipal processes, we depend so much on technology and good connectivity. So great to have those kinds of orgs involved. So digital equity, think of that as the goal. And then digital inclusion, a term they're often used interchangeably, but think of it as the work, the how. So many of you who might be aware of what's happening at the Southwest Harbor Library or local libraries on the island know that there are activities that are trying to help people access and use this information that comes over their internet connection. So digital inclusion, yes, it means making sure there's robust broadband internet service so people can achieve digital equity, but also that people have access to devices. So often these end up being lent through libraries or public computer access at libraries, access to digital literacy training. The National Digital Equity Center, which is active in some libraries on MDI, provides free digital literacy classes. So is doing that work of digital inclusion, quality technical support, online content designed to encourage participation. So the state is having to address all of these 5 elements in a digital equity plan that is being submitted to the federal government to bring some specific funding to the state. And I'll talk about that in a minute right now. So again, if you like getting into kind of how this funding is coming to Maine, the bipartisan infrastructure law included both some legislation in something called the Digital Equity Act and the Broadband Equity and Access and Deployment Program. The BEAD funds coming to Maine, Brian, is that the $272 million? Is that the big number that's been, yeah. So just for BEAD, just for infrastructure, building out the BEAD allocation that Maine has just announced is up around 272 million. The Digital Equity Act nationally was less than $2 billion allocated nationally, and Maine doesn't know exactly what our allocation will be yet, but it's looking like at least 100 million just for digital equity related investments. And the way that the state has decided to try to figure out where to direct those investments is really with the help of these 13 regional partners, as well as a state digital equity task force that's been meeting all year to shape a statewide plan that gets submitted to the federal government and helps determine that allocation that's going to come to Maine. I'm going to share the link to these slides. It's just an accessible Google Doc afterwards. So if you're interested in the nitty gritties, you can do that. And I'm also going to kind of skip this because we're already at July, but pretty much over the last several months, the state has been doing an engagement process, again, using these 13 partners as a key part of that to draft first regional plans, and those got rolled up to a state plan that is out for feedback right now. The state, I'm just going to focus on the digital equity side because BEAD is a whole other animal, but the digital equity plan has to address how investments and activities in Maine are going to specifically help these covered populations, is what the term in Congress's language was. These are groups that are disproportionately impacted by what's called the digital divide. So Island Institute's job throughout the last several months was to make sure we were coordinating with organizations that work directly with low-income households, older adults, incarcerated individuals, et cetera. And so the way we did that in Hancock and Waldo was by pulling together folks that, may or may not have already been working on broadband and digital inclusion, but who we knew could, be the partners that had the closest access to those covered populations. And Kathy has been along in this process and kind of listening throughout on with her Mount Desert 365 hat, but
Very small role.
Right. Yeah. Well, for writing the digital equity plan, we kind of told Kathy, like, oh, focus on your infrastructure planning on MDI, like keep doing your committee meetings, because we just need to, spend some time with the community action programs and the Seacoast mission and people who are working with those specific populations that I mentioned. So with the help of those folks, we drafted a regional digital inclusion plan that was one of the really data points that the state used to create the state plan. And I'll send this out afterwards for those who want to dig in a little bit more, but as part of our process, we had to come up with a vision statement, and we really used all of those partners to try to color the statement that was created for Hancock and Waldo counties. And then our regional plan, MCA assured us that we could consider it a living document. So I'll have the link to it that you can read the 30-page plan yourself if you'd like, but a lot of it is just more what we've collected and not necessarily details of, we've got a 5-year action plan in there, but I think that's the piece that is really going to depend on what groups like yours and what communities actually are able to achieve in their broadband planning, and then building off of that to make sure you're prepared to if you're investing some of your own dollars and you want to make sure that there's a good take rate and that there's real success, that's going to be where we start to engage on how can the digital inclusion plan support you in the activities you would be doing after actually getting your infrastructure challenges dealt with. So in general, though, the recommendations try to celebrate the things that make our rural communities thrive, and not just keeping resources in the hubs, the Ellsworths and the Belfasts of the two counties, but really making sure that the small communities and those small community libraries are named and kind of in the front lines for funding opportunities, to fund devices, to fund extra staff to be able to do technical support. Our recommendations don't reinvent the wheel. We try to make sure that we're not creating new organizations or trying to redirect resources to organizations like Island Institute that don't do digital literacy. We want to send that to the adult eds and the community eds and the libraries already doing a lot of that work. We really feel like the state needs to take some more leadership on some areas, including telehealth, because of those big partners such as Maine Health and Northern Light that I think could be doing more to really make telehealth accessible. And then we also have the opportunity to help direct investments for something called connectivity hubs, where strategically placing a hub that would have maybe a similar role as a library, but the problem is not everybody feels comfortable going into a library. So how can you make sure places where vulnerable populations are already going, even food banks and stuff, have some sort of programming available to get people, for example, signed up for the Affordable Connectivity Program. So that's one way that we want to direct investments to the connectivity hubs. And then another one Island Institute is very focused on for this coming year is a partnership on Deer Isle Stonington to be a model for workforce retraining support that involves any sort of workforce training right now involves digital literacy. Like you can't do a commercial driver's license without having to know how to, be really competent on an app. So we're working with community partners there to really focus on families that are currently really dependent on the lobster fishing industry and maybe facing some pretty major uncertainty based on impending whale regulations. So we're trying to make digital inclusion a core part of how communities prepare for economic disruption. I'm going to skip over this because you'll have the link to the 30-page document, but we had to provide a set number of recommendations along with a budget to the state that, again, they could use as a way to roll up to their plan. So to that point, there'll be four links in this slide that I share out right on the last slide that you can click on to take action in any one of these areas as an individual, and then maybe in the future talk about as a regional group what can be done to be part of this movement. So the first thing right now is the state's digital equity plan and broadband action plan are out for feedback, and they have a Google form that you can fill out and provide even one piece of feedback. Every bit that they get is really valuable to making sure they have as strong a draft of each of these plans as possible before submitting to the National Telecommunications Information Authority. And another one that's just ongoing is that the FCC has the Affordable Connectivity Program. It's $30 off the monthly internet bill for anybody who's already qualified for SNAP or other benefits. Enrollment is way lower than it should be because people don't know about it and because it's not that easy to sign up. So this link sends you to Maine Connectivity Authority's page on how to do promotion, how to you can get trained to actually help people enroll themselves. You can print flyers and put them up at your local food pantry. So that's a second call to action. I've got a couple links just related to our regional plan that, again, it's a living document where we're just because we submitted it to the state doesn't mean we can't keep developing it and making sure we're doing everything we can to gather the information of what are the people and places and programs worth investing in specifically on Mount Desert Island and this region. So we have a digital inclusion asset inventory that includes, all the libraries and the educational programs and any other programs that might be already doing digital inclusion work. And then you're welcome to review our local digital inclusion plan and provide any comments or feedback at any time. Again, it's just an open Google Doc that has commentability. And I'll drop my email in the chat as well, because yeah, there's a lot of people getting involved in this, and we'd love to just be the coordinator of the conversation, but do what we can to make sure we're focusing kind of equally on those infrastructure investments and how we're actually going to make sure everybody in our communities benefit. So I
Wow, that's
breezed
great.
through that, I realize. So
Yeah, no, that's a lot of work there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Krista?
put the link to the slides, which include all the links to all the other stuff in the chat right now.
You know, it's too bad that I think about, you know, how to reach the most people and to somehow motivate people to do it, right? I just wonder if there's a lot of, I mean, we probably all have done a lot of online courses, whatever, you know, that they kind of step by step walk you through it. I don't know if that's something that could be done with people in terms of digital equity, helping, you know, some of the basics of it and have some sort of reward if they complete it.
I think that's a great idea. And like, that's the kind of thing that if there were whether we wanted to do that at the broad full Hancock County regional level, or if an organization within, you know, a local organization wanted to sketch up a program that included that, that stipend idea actually has really taken hold. Island Institute was providing $25 Hannaford gift cards just to get people to take the state's digital equity survey, because the state was only hearing from people in the middle and upper classes and only hearing from people who were retired and had income and didn't need, you know, so
Right.
the voices they needed to hear from most for that feedback were those covered populations.
Exactly.
So we distributed, hundreds of dollars of Hannaford gift cards, and knew that at least Hancock and Waldo counties had, you know, people from those populations filling out the survey, such that it was. But digital equity, the National Digital Equity Center, which that's not hyperlinked, but digitalequitycenter.org is Maine-based and does provide free digital literacy classes to all Mainers. But you know, a lot of people say, well, the first hurdle is they don't have a good internet connection or know how to use the computer in the first place. How do
Right.
they engage with those online classes? They have a telephone number, and NDEC will provide, you know, you with a tutor, somebody who will walk you through on the phone how to turn on a computer and get to their classes. So they're definitely a key resource in all of this. And I love the idea of making it even easier, not just free, but actually incentivizing.
You know, Chris, I don't know if you realize this, but about 2 years ago, we had a series of public meetings, and one of them was with Suzanne Corbett from the National Digital Equity Center. And I believe, Scott, at least you and I came away from that meeting with the message that if, as a town, we wanted to move forward with building out an infrastructure, doing anything, bringing in an infrastructure, that we really needed that digital equity and inclusion was the way to do it, to bring people on board to see how their lives would be impacted with access to this, so that we would have more people engaged in a process. So, and I think besides telehealth and all of that, it's harder and harder to pay a bill. People don't send you bills anymore. It's all online these days. Filing an application for Social Security is all online these days, you know. There's fewer and fewer opportunities to actually get a piece of paper in the mail and fill out something you need. And I think that there are lots of ways that we might be able to help move that along and bring people on board. So. Yeah,
because I think one thing, a side effect of COVID, I think it ended up forcing people that normally wouldn't have been a part of technology. It forced them to at least dabble in it, and so we could keep the momentum going.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Krista.
Yeah, and I did just include one more little note, that the state's digital equity plan, the link to that, but what Kathy just described and what NDEC presented to your group, a few communities have have attempted to, at the town level, take on digital equity. But Bremen was maybe in a kind of similar situation to your region, in that the Bremen Broadband Committee ended up going with the incumbent internet provider to apply for a state grant and get the community built out with fiber. But the committee didn't stop working then. They said, okay, what do we do next with digital equity? And ended up getting the town to invest $25,000 of ARPA funds toward implementing the digital equity plan. And it's fairly simple, and it does involve that partnership with National Digital Equity Center to actually administer the program. But there's a brief description of it on page 39, and that could be kind of the logical next step for your group.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us, and you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of our meeting. So we do have to move on, though. I think update from Derlin, Casco Bay Advisors, Acadia National Park, regards to properties to connect with Spectrum.
May I ask a question first?
Sure.
So Krista's links will be in our Dropbox, the committee Dropbox, yes?
I can do that. Yes.
Good.
I clicked on them all, so I have them on my website, and I will copy them all and put them together for you.
Good. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Krista. Very good.
Thank you.
So who wants to start the report out on properties to connect with Spectrum? Is it Derlin?
Well, we still, I think we're gonna get a report from Brian.
Okay.
About the final count, perhaps, of non-park properties. Am I right there, Brian, or am I wrong?
No, so that was added to my list, and I have to say it was on my plate and it slid off my plate. So I appreciate the reminder. I can get that to you very shortly, probably certainly by next week.
Okay, great.
The properties, and those were the properties we were talking about. Should Spectrum be willing to connect to additional locations, what would those locations be?
Right.
That's what I remember that conversation being.
Yes. And part of that was definitely Jordan Pond House was in there, and whatever other sites might need it for residential use and everything else. I got a message earlier from John Ipe, and I made sure he had the link to join us today, but I'm not sure what happened there. So,
well, I think that's the other piece, is that Jordan Pond could enter into agreement and potentially provide some financial support for this project. That was part of it, was trying to figure out what that piece might cost, so he can take it forward. So I don't know if we have an update on that piece.
We do. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can.
All right. And I'm gonna share my screen here. Can you see my screen with the map on?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
We did, and not now.
I'm sorry?
We did, and then it flashed on, and not now.
I'm still seeing it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
can
I'm
see it.
saying it's behind here. I need to do a click. Sorry.
All right. So the two locations that are associated with the Jordan Pond House were 2928 Park Loop Road and 2906. Spectrum did provide a cost for those two locations of $80,000. So that would, and let me back up. We had asked them for a overall cost to provide service to all of the unserved locations in Mount Desert. And I was just looking for that amount. Does anybody recall what their quote was?
We have it in old minutes.
The
I thought it was
11.5 million you're
No,
talking
that
about?
was
no.
consolidated.
That's consolidated, correct, yes.
I thought
right.
I
We
heard
were
a number
putting,
of
I
like
think it was like
150,000.
350 and we were putting in 125, something like that.
Yeah, I thought it was around 150. So basically, I think what they done with the 80,000 is this whole area to get up to those two addresses would be $80,000.
And
In
what,
addition to what they provided us earlier, or just as a portion of?
A
of the
subset,
overall?
a subset of what they provided us earlier.
Okay.
Now, and I think the reason it's so expensive is there's no utility poles along Park Loop Road. So they would have to go underground.
Aren't there some poles that come off the corner?
So these small little circles here, if you can see, that's the extent of the pole line that
Gotcha.
I have access to. And I looked at aerial imagery going up Park Loop Road and I didn't see any poles. So
You may be right. That may be where they terminate.
right. Now, there are two other addresses up here. One is just really 2960 is just a parking lot.
Yep.
And 2921 does appear to be a structure. I don't know if it's the Park Service structure,
It is. I bet it's the pond, the gatehouse.
whatever
Yep.
this structure is right here.
Yep.
yeah, that's the
That's
gatehouse.
the gatehouse.
All right. So that does not need service, correct?
In a perfect world, it would, but it could not be covered by the concessioner.
All right. So the way that this would work is it's a chicken and egg. If you're asking for that concessioner to be served first, it's $80,000 to get up there, and then that other location subsequently could be served probably at no additional cost.
Correct.
I mean, I would think going forward that the park would want high-speed internet as well, not just the concessioner. And it's all the Department of the Interior anyway, isn't it?
It is, but it's the, right now, it's, the conversation is about the color of money. And the inability of the Park Service to transfer operating funds to a municipality. We ran into a roadblock. There is no legal authority that we can find to transfer ONPS, what we call ONPS monies, to a municipality. Therefore, we had to find, was there any other mechanism? The one other mechanism we do have available to us is through a concessioner, that a concessioner may make improvements that are considered, have what we call LSI, or lease surrender interest, which means they pay it up front and then the Park Service pays them back for that improvement. So it's a pass through. But the caveat with that is that the concessioner can only make improvements to land under their assignment. So there's my very short version of a very long story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to, as another get around, what would be involved in making other lands available to the concessioner for a short period of time? Is that another act of Congress?
Well, that the land assignment gets done with the issuance of the contract.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So the 80,000 is the projected cost of this project for the pond house and the dorm?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else on that subject, or?
So I guess my question would be, what would be the next step in order for the concessioner to fund that?
Yeah, so I'll have to get with my regional team and propose this and go from there.
All right. And how long do you think all of that would take?
To be quite honest, I don't know. I think we can move pretty quick. Yeah, I'm in direct contact with them, so it's just a matter of now that I have this information, I can send it through tonight, follow up tomorrow, and get a gauge of how quick we want to move.
All right. So I think once you are able, or you're confident that you can secure those funds, then we would sit down with Spectrum to finalize an agreement. And define then how much of the project will be funded by the concessioner and how much is funded by the town. That is the largest segment of construction to serve any unserved locations in the entire town. So
So can I ask that this might be a dumb question, but Kevin mentioned about how they can't deliver funds from the park to, the park can't deliver funds to the municipality. Can the municipality transfer funds to the park, or is it the same issue? In other words, can we actually even legally pay for that through town
On a
money?
general question, the town does transfer money to the park and vice versa. The park actually, we transfer a bill to the park for the use of the Jordan Ponds, the Seal Harbor and the Otter Creek pump stations for their wastewater. So there's bills, but that's a special deal. I mean, we could check into this. I think the basic, what I need to know is what's the basic cost, what's the total cost of everything? And then we figure out the niceties of what it costs.
How to get it
I'll
done.
get my finance person involved in that. Because that's a little above my pay grade.
So
And
Kevin, the concessionaire, we're talking about what, the dorms and the Jordan Pond House?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Kevin, could it not that the concessionaire just makes their own special deal with Spectrum? Cuts that off.
They
and
could
the town just
conceivably
takes care
do
of
that,
what's left?
but if it gets lumped in under this contract that's already moving, that might expedite that process. I don't know if it would expedite the process or not.
Yeah.
But yes, that would be an option. I would say one additional hurdle that we're going to have, along with John checking with his organization, is that once John proposes to the park that they want to do this, I have to run it back through the NPS side and say, hey, are we all in agreement? This is LSI. Are we all in agreement that, that this is good? And that would take a little bit of review as well, but we might be able to get both trains on the track at the same time.
What I'm thinking of is basically once we get a price with Spectrum,
Yep,
then the town pays its share and the concessionaire pays its share. No money has to go moving back and
Right.
forth between entities.
absolutely. That's correct.
So it sounds like John will check on, that'll be the next step for this portion, right?
Yes.
All right.
Great.
So then are we ready to move on? Update from Brian about Spectrum cost proposal contract, or?
Frank, you're on mute.
Brian, can you put up the map again? So I'm a little confused. Thank you. So what we're talking about in sharing costs, move to the south a little bit, is that we would be paying for part of Seal Harbor up to where they're going to go, where maybe the telephone poles are, and share costs. And then there's the 80,000 going toward Jordan Pond. Is that right?
yeah, as I understand it, you can consider this this section right here to be the $80,000 section.
Okay, and we would be paying for what section south of that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The blue dots indicate what's already got service.
That's correct.
And so we're just talking about the remaining green.
Well, we're talking about the remaining green right there, plus, well, that's a campground over there. I don't think that's going to be included, but there
Well,
the other areas that we identified in the study that were unserved. So the remaining cost will get you 100% coverage of all of the town locations.
Nice. Good clarification, thank you.
so we will not be including Blackwoods Campground because it is park property and that's a no-go. Is that right?
Unless the park wants it served.
Okay. And Kevin, that's up to you guys, right? That's not a concessionaire's land.
Correct. We don't, as I mentioned before, we wouldn't have any mechanism to financially support that.
Right. Okay.
And also, that is something that if the Park Service decided they wanted to do, then they would contract directly with Spectrum.
Correct.
Because the Spectrum infrastructure goes to the entrance of that campground or
Right.
the last pole there. So. You want me to give you an update on Consolidated?
Please.
All right. So on Monday, the way we had left it is Consolidated had determined what the total cost was to build out everywhere on the island, all 4 communities. And they had identified what was the subsidy amount that they were going to need to build out to 100%, which I believe was about 5.4 million. And we asked them to break that down by the 4 communities. And they said they would. On Monday, I sent an email asking, will we have that in time for today's meeting? And the response was yes. And at 4 o'clock, I sent an email asking, should I assume we won't have it in time for today's meeting? So they continue to not be responsive to that request. And I'll keep asking.
But at least they have said, yes, we will break it down, but they haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, and there's a lot that is going on at Consolidated right now in terms of reorganizations and in terms of some of their investors trying to take the company private. My guess is that there are so many moving parts that it's hard for them to make any commitments right now. That's my guess. But I wish they would just say that.
And their proposal is fiber everywhere, right?
Their proposal was fiber to the home to 100% of the island.
Yep. All right, so we'll, I guess, wait until we see that breakdown, right? In terms of going back to Spectrum cost proposal, my understanding, if I have this straight, we're really just waiting to see what comes back about the park, right, before we commit to anything with Spectrum. Is that correct? To see if we can just wrap that all in together.
We could, now that they've given us a quote for the Jordan Pond House and the dormitory, we could enter into an agreement to take it as far as where that construction would take off and end up with just 2 agreements.
So are we ready to move forward with, as far as the town build out, the
Or we're waiting on the cost from Spectrum, are we not?
They gave
Well,
us a cost.
no, we have Spectrum.
we know what the cost is. I just can't put my finger on it right now, but we
Yeah.
have the cost. We know how much
125 to
the two-
150,
I'm sorry.
125 to 150 in there, something like that.
I hesitate. I think it's around 150. So what we're talking about potentially then is 70,000 for the town's contribution, and you would get 100% coverage other than that section going up to Jordan Pond House.
Right,
Once we get that, we could take that number to the select board because we have that much money in our ARPA funds. And so we could ask them for a transfer once we get that to that point, so.
What I'll do is I'll touch base with Spectrum. I'll have them put together a two-part agreement, if you will, that clearly delineates what they're gonna do for the park service and what they're gonna do for the town. And then we'll go from there.
okay. Because it'd be good to get that moving, I would think.
It would be great to get a digital copy of that information also, so I can send up on our end.
When you say a digital copy of that information, what information are you referring to?
Just the cost of that project for the concessionaires end. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. What I would anticipate is we'll get a letter from Spectrum outlining that cost and making a commitment to build it for that amount. That we could then turn into a contract for you.
great.
Because if we went the route with Spectrum, at least we can get 100% build out. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think if on the list of priorities for consolidated, we're down to about a bazillionth place. Don't you think?
Well, they have made a commitment to the town of Bar Harbor to build fiber to the home.
Yeah.
And I think it's very likely that they will build additional fiber to the home in other towns, just not to 100% of the area.
Mhm.
And so what we're talking about here is what is the cost for 100% coverage?
Right. But in the meantime, we could at least get built out to, you know, those places that aren't served for a relatively small amount of money, right, that we have.
I think that, yes, it is a reasonable cost that they're providing you to build out to the remainder.
Yeah. So Kathy, don't you think we ought to, so what do we do to get that going?
I think we go back. I was just looking through my files and we had a presentation last October from Spectrum that talked about 44 homes and an overall cost and what they wanted as a contribution from the town, which was considerably higher than what we talked about today. So I'm looking through old minutes to figure out what the cost finally is. And so I
have it here somewhere. I just can't put my finger.
I know. I think if we can, I think the next step is to get a letter from them to say the town would contract up to this point, and then Spectrum would contract separately with concessionaire at the park. So we actually break it down into two, but they can be done simultaneously. That would be the understanding, was that once they're on that road, they're going to continue to go, right? Just
Right.
economies of scale. If they've got a crew on the ground, they want to just keep going.
Right.
But so we need something more timely from Spectrum to say, here's where we're going to go. And what that cost is going to
And
be.
then that cost we can present to the selectmen, right?
Yes.
and try to get approval to start on that, to go under agreement.
Yeah.
So would that be a next step for our next meeting, to have that letter and take action on it as far as getting it to the selectmen?
Brian, do you
Well,
think we could have it then?
The cost that Charter quoted on October 13th of last year, the town contribution was 214,000.
Right.
So if we subtract the 80 from that, we're looking at 134,000. And Derlin, you said you have 121?
I think I have 123.7, Brian, I think it's what it is. 143 and change.
Well, I'm fairly confident that if we were to counter at, call it 120,
Yeah,
Spectrum would accept it.
And
That's good. It's good. to
Brian,
know.
I had in other notes, in our April notes of this year, we noted that for Spectrum 100% coverage, the cost of proposal, the total cost to the town is about 150,000, and the town has 125 available. That's what we were talking about then for 38 properties. So I think that between that October of 22, I think Melinda Kinney came back with a different proposal that was less cost to the town. But we have to find that memo.
I just found it. There's that, you're right. On March 28th of this year, they came back with a subsidy proposal of 150,000.
Right.
And I'd like to say that, you know, with each month that passes, they are connecting to more properties. So I'm thinking that with time, we need an updated cost. I mean, as recent as possible, might be less.
I will ask them for that, but I wouldn't expect it to come very quickly, given that virtually every town in their service footprint is asking similar questions of them. So
True enough.
they're backed up. All the providers are backed up. So that cost at this point is about 3.5 months old. That's fairly recent.
So maybe better to do the deal and get it done. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm
yeah,
wondering,
I think I agree.
because we're looking at $70,000. And they're gonna spend all of $80,000 on the park service because it's underground. It's not easy digging. It's so this is a good deal.
Because that 150 did include extending it out to the park.
That's correct.
Okay, good. All right. So it's in your hands, Brian, to connect with Spectrum and get us a proposal or something in writing from them that we can also then share with John. Right. Okay, great.
And they're eager to get this done. I talked with Melinda earlier this week, so she keeps asking, what's the status?
Good.
Yeah, it's time to
Do it.
fish or cut bait, whatever the saying is, right? Okay,
Fishing season. Yeah.
yeah, there we go. So I guess we just did the next steps, right? Oh, no, Tremont, how about update from Tremont Broadband?
We haven't met in a while. Other things have been going on. And we had, Jesse had contacted and finished our relationship with, not finished the relationship, but officially begun our relationship with the Island Institute. And we were finishing up our survey for the town. That should be, I think we extended it a little bit because we didn't get that many responses. And then I was interested to hear what Brian had to say about the updates on Consolidated. Is there like, did I miss it, or is there like an expected time when Consolidated is planning on doing the island?
There is not a date yet.
That's all I have. We haven't met in a couple of months because of various things. So that's what I have.
And I'll just note that the Island Institute piece was just a small grant to help with mailing costs with that survey. But even if it's, the committee has flexibility if they don't feel like they need to mail the survey to everybody, if they want to use it for affordable connectivity program outreach or anything. But the committee has a small injection into their budget for community engagement.
Thank you, Krista.
So discussion, next steps, it sounds like Brian's gonna get a firm proposal from Spectrum that we can present to the selectmen. Perhaps by next month, we'll have a cost breakdown from Consolidated for each town. But it seems like no matter what, I mean, that seems such a lofty project. So it seems to me that no matter what, we want to at least get 100% build out, right?
I would think.
Yeah.
I would think we'd have one thing complete and then.
Right.
Full fiber is a whole nother issue. But
Right.
This one will be behind us now. We'd have 100% coverage of some sort of internet access. So,
Any other next steps?
Let's see if we can get those two done.
Yeah, be good. All right, other business. Other than I have to get ready for the bash of the boatyard.
there you go.
Okay, hearing none. Our next meeting is August 10th at 4 p.m.
I will probably not be able to attend that one because I'll be hopefully over at a meeting over in Western Maine that day, so.
Okay,
But I don't think it's necessary. We get the numbers and all that sort
Yep.
of stuff. I don't think it'll require my presence here. We'll just push it forward to the next BOS meeting after that, once we get it, so.
so should we
I'll
get,
check in with you, Derlin, right before that and see if there's any update from the town that we could present. How's that?
Yep, sounds good.
so should we get on the agenda?
Well, let's wait till we actually get something.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So we can get on the agenda easy
Then we'll
enough.
get on the.
The last,
Anytime.
all right, people. I think that's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Don't get too bashed.
No, I know it. No, I won't. I'll behave kind of.
Very good.
All right, guys. Thank you.